So before and after the update, I've been playing the 27SM an absolute ton to level the Russian bomber line and then to unlock the SU-34. And whilst I'm playing the fallback and collecting clips, I thought I'd make a new video on the flanker. It's become one of those planes that the more I play it, the more I love it. Once you get to grips with how it flies, it's so much fun. If you get caught in a dogfight against a competent player in a more agile airframe, you're in trouble, yes. But how often does that actually happen in top tier? You should take as little fuel as you dare. With a lot of fuel it becomes even harder to handle, so I usually go with about 55% on smaller maps and 65% on larger maps. For the loadout, I absolutely recommend you swap 2 of your R77s for R27 ETs. I'll show you plenty of reasons for this throughout the video. In the background here you see me defending and flying away from what appears to be a developing furball. I didn't want to fire any R77s off yet because I didn't feel like I had a good lock on anyone, and obviously they don't have good range, so you want to avoid firing them from too far so as not to waste your missiles. I'm also getting low as well. This sort of plateau on the canyon map is already quite high, so my usual strategy of just below contrail height is too close to the ground, so everyone's going to spot you and you're going to be very vulnerable. As I come around and get the HMD lock on this guy, I'm going to lift my altitude up just a bit to try and lift my missile over that bit of terrain, and then I'm going to duck down, go into a notch, get low, make it as hard as possible for him to hit me. It ends up mine doesn't connect either, but that's fine. And now it's getting a bit chaotic, so I'm making sure I'm flaring, I'm putting chaff in the air, and I'm keeping low, trying to rely on stuff like multipath, trying to keep myself as difficult a target to hit as possible. Haven't got a kill yet, but I've managed to survive quite a bit of chaos there, which can be quite difficult in the flanker. So I'm actually going to pause it here. I haven't spoken much about how your reactions and ability to control your radar under pressure give you such a massive edge in the past. So as I'm coming around this turn, I've immediately clocked the contrail and then the flanker a bit further over. After I play the clip, pay attention to how quickly I switch off my radar and switch to the HMD with the lock radar on target keybind to get those missiles off. Then see I'm reacting to the new threats as they emerge. Wherever I'm trying to notch or multipath, I'm taking the most obvious defensive measure in each scenario, whilst also getting those HMD R77s off. Still keeping low with the head on with this F-16, cutting a path through the trees, making sure I'm at multipath height. There's no RWR for the launch, so you know it's a 9M, so you know whatever plane you're coming up against in the head on, it's always helpful to put a few flares in the air because you don't want to get caught out with those head on IR launches. So straight away in this game we can see some contrails and some missile diamonds on the right, and then the F-16 shows up shortly after. I'm looking for a launch here. He's about to kill my friend who's not paying enough attention. Shoot off the ET, and then as I turn around here, quickly spot this F-16 that fires at me. Really important that you get these high off-ball launches in the flanker so you don't have to leave your angle too much to get the shot. So it's nice and easy there for me to get into the notch, whereas, you know, if you're putting your nose on too much and not taking the launch quite far off bore sight, you're much more likely to eat the missile, because obviously it's a lot harder to get this airframe round to 90 degrees in time. So now we're pushing over. I'm holding my launches here because it's not great locks. I don't want to accidentally get a team kill, so I'm just taking my time. And then as this flanker pulls away, I get an ET off. And a note here for if you're playing against a flanker and he's on your tail this close, you've got to be pre-flaring, because even an R73 would be difficult if you're not pre-flaring at this range. Bit easier, but yeah, the ET is so fast you have to have flares in the air, especially with your afterburner showing. Then you've got to be maneuvering afterwards as well. Now I'm going to stay low and keep in the terrain here. I've got a few pings in my RWR, and that was quite a big sort of furball that I just came out of, so there's potentially going to be a few people looking this way, so I want to make it difficult for them to pinpoint where I am. Sometimes I'd reclimb at this point, but that's only if I think no one's currently looking at me. As it is, I felt like they were, so I'm going to keep low and just scoot over the mountains and just see who I can pick up. So shortly in a second you're going to see someone pop up on my RWR on the front left. Now something I do a lot here is I switch to my HMD and I just fish for a lock in the general area. I didn't know that's exactly where he was, but I knew he's potentially sort of in that vicinity. So I think it's quite a good trick where you just sort of, you see a ping on your RWR, if you have a rough idea of where you think they might be coming from, just go for a lock on your HMD. It can be a lot quicker than using your TWS sometimes. So while that went on, I made sure I dipped low to multipath using the terrain, because I also got a missile warning from ahead of me as well. So obviously, as I usually say, if you think you're being fired on from multiple angles, try and use terrain, try and use multipath if you can't reliably notch both missiles. Now I'm trying to figure out where this guy went. I obviously see the RWR pings every now and then, so I'm just turning around, constantly putting flares in the air, and then there he is, he shows up again. Really quick, go for the high off ball launch and see the difference in R2 strategies there and why he dies and I don't. Is I'm barely leaving my notch angle to get that launch off, whereas he's just flying head on towards me, which puts you at a massive disadvantage in a short range head on like that. Now as I come round, I see that guy's contrail, so I get a missile up at him. I'm not expecting that to get a kill, but I do want to put the pressure on, seeing as he's coming down this way. Then I'm just going to fly over these mountains and just see what pops up. Get the SU-34 ping on the RWR now, and quickly then he gets spotted, so I'm using my HMD, just getting a launch off there. J10 shows up, same deal, quickly switch on my HMD, then immediately start going defensive. I knew he was about to launch at me. Use the air brake there, very important in the flank to use your air brake if you're going quite fast. You know, I was over Mach 1, I needed to slow my plane down to get around in the notch. So obviously there's still an F-15 on my tail now, and I've got no Fox 3, so I need to keep low. I'm using the terrain, I'm using multipath as usual, and I'm trying to find a spot to turn around and try and force a merge, because obviously I need to get into a dogfight now if I'm going to have any chance of winning this. So I pick my spot here to turn, because I've got a nice little valley to turn into, trying to keep my speed not too fast. As I turn, I'm going to start putting countermeasures in the air, but he gets a couple of launches off, so I'm going to have to make sure I notch here to make sure I don't die to those. And then I'm just going to take the risk, go for broke and turn in. I go for a very high off-ball R73, and then I'm moving back into a notch. He doesn't flare, and somehow I get that kill. Couldn't win this one though, because the last guy just ran away from me until the tickets ran out basically. This next clip has another really strong focus on positioning and where to be and where not to be in my case and in my opponent's cases. So this guy up high, he's at contrail height. He's the only guy at control height of the enemy team, so he's attracting a lot of attention to himself. I'm not firing on him because my R77 doesn't have a lot of range, and I know my teammates are probably firing at him as well. So I was just trying to keep an eye on him and just make sure that he doesn't come my way. So now it seems I'm not contested up here and there's not a lot going on my RWR. I can start looking down and start looking for targets to try and make the most of the position I'm in. So shortly here, see a flanker shows up, but he's dead, so I don't need to worry about him. Then the Tornado and F-15 show up. They're perfect targets here, so I get a missile off on both of them. The Tornado is going to avoid it. Don't know if multipath or what, but the F-15 is going to eat that. And now again, I didn't overcommit here. After I fired, I started turning back away from where the clump of their team is going to be, because they're not spotted right now. And if I continue flying straight, there's a real possibility that I end up with like 4 or 5 people looking up at me. So now I'm just flying passive a little bit, just waiting for the game to develop a bit more, waiting for the enemy team and my team to push in a bit so I can see how it's going to play out. I don't want to be sort of up high in the middle of the map when it starts to develop, because I don't want to end up with like 4 people shooting up at me. Start to see the missile contrails and then that Gripen. Lose the lock briefly, looks like he's turned away. He has been hit, but he looks like he might still be operational, so I'm going to send an ET his way. And then the missile diamonds start to show up. I'm going to turn around, start firing off R77s. I get all 3 off, and then I'm going to turn into the notch here, but it looks like that wasn't for me, so nothing to worry about. Collect 2 kills, but it looks like the Gripen's managed to multipath the R77, so I'm looking for the top-down high aspect R73. If he doesn't spot that launch immediately and flare, or has pre-flares in the air, he's going to eat that, which he does. Like, if you're in something like a Gripen especially, that basically has unlimited countermeasures, you've got to be putting tons of flares in the air there, because if I can't get a clean launch with the R73, that's a much trickier scenario for me, because I might be forced into a dogfight, which I'm not favoured to win. And now again, with this flanker here, that's about the worst position to be coming head-on into a joust in. He can't get to multipath height. It's going to be tricky for him to get around in the notch. If he was higher up, I might have taken longer to spot him, might be more distance, might be easier for him to get into the notch in time. But as it is, he's in about the worst position because he kind of has nowhere to go, whereas I can just comfortably multipath his missiles. And then someone else is going to get this F-15 at the end here, and I'm going to move into the next game. So this next clip is going to showcase a bit of why I really love the ETs and how they really add a nice bit of variety to your kit that no one else really has. Also going to see a couple of lucky kills here. I'm going to shoot some R-77s off at the start here, and these are very easily defeatable notchable missiles, but you'll see that they collect them in the kill feed. And I guess the only lesson there is make sure you actually notch missiles that are coming for you. This guy up here, this is a tactic I use a lot. I fire the R-77, but he's not far from a notch, so I'm going to give him an ET as well. The idea there is he maybe doesn't realise that an IR missile has also been fired at him. So shortly in a second I'm going to see an F-15 down below, and this is perfect. I'm going to switch to HMD so I don't give him an RWR ping with my TWS. Fire the rear aspect ET, and he's shortly going to collect that as the guy I fired at earlier dies as well. So I get 2 ET kills there. That second one, he has no idea I'm there, he doesn't know he needs to flare, and there aren't other planes that can do this because they won't have the range to reach him with an IR missile. Now the kill on this J-10 is going to be very similar to the Gripen kill in the last clip. He defeats my R-77, so I'm looking for that top-down R-73, and again, J-10 doesn't have as many countermeasures, but if you think this is coming, you've got to be pre-flaring. As it is, he doesn't flare at all, but even if he flared late, that's not going to help you there with a 73. You've got to pre-flare against flankers and MiG-29s. It's just mandatory, really. So I wanted to look at a quick joust in this game. So I see that Contrail and that F-16 who's pushed quite close there at the start of this match. And as I turn around, I'm going for the HMD high off-bore I-77, and look at the difference in our positioning. As I got that launch off, I was already close to a notch, so it's close range, but I defend his missile quite comfortably, but he's coming in really fast, head on, and just gives him no chance to evade a missile. When you're pushing in on someone like that who's already in a notch, you can't be too aggressive because they've actually kind of got the upper hand if they've got a missile that can pull in for that high off-bore sight launch. The R-77 I just fired at that F-15 is shortly going to kill him. I have no idea how. No business getting that kill with an R-77. I was actually worried I was going to team kill the teammate because he was coming in a head-on aspect, which I thought my missile would probably switch to. As it is, I get a bit lucky there, so I collect the kill. Now, this is an interesting one, and you see me slag off the AMRAAM quite a lot, actually. I'm moving in here, and I'm not taking the shot because I kind of want to let my teammate win this dogfight. But because I'm pushing in, I didn't think the F-16 was going to be paying attention to me. As it is, he was, so I've paused it at the point at which he fires at me. Now, he fires about 2 kilometers out with an AMRAAM. I have absolutely no hope of getting into the notch here. It's just in fate's hands. But because it's an AMRAAM, you're going to see when I play it in a second, it doesn't even close to pull into me. If that launch was with an R-77, a Mika, maybe even a PL-12 or R-Data, that's 100% going to pull in and kill me. I'll make this the last one so the video doesn't get too long because I have absolutely piles of flanker clips from all the games I've played over the last week or so. So I was just defending some early launches here, and then we get that flanker pop up down below. As I've mentioned in the past, with a top down aspect like that, even if you're a multipath height, the missile's probably going to track through your plane regardless, and it does, so I get the first kill. Now I'm going to do the usual R-77, R-27 ET double launch trick here. Launching the R-77 first to try and make him think that he's only got radar missiles after him. As it is, the R-77 does just go to space, as you see, but regardless, he still doesn't flare for the ET for some reason. Some people, even if their RWR isn't saying anything, will still think it's a radar missile after them. I can't stress enough how much fun these missiles are, and that's the tip for you, is if you think a missile's coming for you and there's nothing on your RWR and you can see it and it's still tracking you, is probably an ET. Quick jump ahead here because there was a bit of downtime to a point where I spot an F-15 down below. I'm going to give him a double launch here because he's flying over the mountains. I'm thinking he might be able to multipath my 77, so I decided to go for the double launch. As it is, I waste 2 missiles because someone else gets him. Now it's going to get a bit chaotic, so first up I'm going to be caught in a joust with this flanker, and look how I'm playing on the limit here, getting that high off bore sight launch, using my air brake to slow down, and you have to play completely on the limit in a situation like that in the flanker in order to get round to that notch in time. I'm coming around now because I see another guy coming. I'm going to get that high off bore sight launch again, and as I'm notching his missile, see how I'm getting low because I noticed the threat ahead of me as well. Now I'm going to use that terrain to protect myself from this guy's launches head on, and then go for the snapshot 73. He didn't put flares in the air as he crested the hill, and I did, so his 73 doesn't connect and mine does. So hopefully from that you can see that once your reactions are good and you're used to the airframe and how it flies, you can really make it do a lot of work for you. It's a fantastic high off bore sight plane, and you need to make use of that so that you can get into those notches in time. You've really got to take advantage of flying it on the limit, like I just said. So hopefully you can see from those clips today that this is why I find the flanker so fun these days. I just think it's got so much more going on than something like the F-15. The F-15 is just boringly efficient. That's the way I describe it. The flanker just is so much more interesting to fly, and I think there's a lot more fun stuff you can do with it at the end of the day. Its key weaknesses are flight performance in, say, a dogfight and BVR, and dogfights aren't very common anyway, and you can usually win them with the R73 unless it's a competent player. And BVR, for me, is one of the most boring ways to play top tier, and not really a reliable way to get you kills unless the people you're flying up against are paying absolutely zero attention. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video today, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one for the SU-34.